Being 7 o'clock, I'd like to open the January 19th meeting of the Carver Select Board. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would someone like to read the community prayer?
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Belvin.
I'm scrolling down to it. Almighty God, humbly we pray your blessing as we concern our life with the opportunity to serve our community. Enhance us with your spirit of dignity and selflessness. May we become instruments of support and understanding as we seek to bring an environment of trust and purpose among all who provide the many services that make us all that we can become. Help us achieve the goals of our commitment in this office that is now our responsibility. And especially, we lift our prayers for the citizens of our community and that we have been allowed to serve, that they may discover the fullness and joy of life that we all seek. And keep those serving in our armed forces and our first responders in our hearts and thoughts. Amen.
Now, I'd like to have a moment of silence for Dorothy Angley. Before we do that, I'd like to read a short statement about her service to the town of Carver. Dorothy Angley, otherwise known as Dot, passed away on January 2nd, 2021. She was the wife of former Select Board member John H. Jack Angley. Dot was a lifelong resident of Carver. She served on the Carver Housing Authority at its inception and on the Carver Arts Council. She also was involved with the Carver Public Library, the Girl Scouts, and Habitat for Humanity. Dot was postmistress for many years at Carver's Central Post Office, when it was still located where Dandy Cafe is now. Dot also was my office assistant for several years when I was the town's conservation agent. If you wanted something done right, you asked Dot, and it would be done well. She will be truly missed. Thank you. And now it's time for citizens' participation. Seeing no citizens that are obviously here for participation, we will move on to the letter from Wareham Police Chief regarding Carver Police Chief Mark Dufley. I realized after I posted this that it sounded kind of ominous. I assure you it's not. So we received this letter addressed to the Carver Board of Selectmen about a week ago or so, and I'd just like to read it aloud for everyone. On Thursday, January 7th, Chief Mark Dufley was requested to attend a Zoom meeting regarding the building of a public safety facility in Wareham. Chief Dufley, on his own time, spent nearly an hour patiently answering questions and giving advice to our committee. The members of the committee appreciated his commentary, patience, and professionalism. I simply wanted to let you know Carver is indeed lucky to have a consummate professional leading its department. Speaking not only as a fellow police chief, but also as a Carver resident, I find the supervisory staff as well as the rank and file at CPD to be an amazing team who perform their duties exceptionally well. Please extend my appreciation to Chief Dufley and his department for the contributions to not only the Carver community, but the general police community as well. If called upon, the Wareham Police Department stands ready to assist your town at any time. Sincerely, John Walczak, Chief of Police. Mr. Dufley, Chief Dufley, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you. Thanks for having me here tonight. I appreciate you reading that, and I appreciate the kind sentiment. Appreciate Chief Walczak's writing the letter. It's always nice to be commented on by one of your peers, somebody that you respect as much as I do. Chief Walsek. He's been in the industry a lot longer than I have, and he's has been a mentor and provided a lot of great experience with me, so I do appreciate that. One of the best lines in that letter for me is the last letter of the second paragraph, because it's not about me. What I did on that night was honestly nothing. It took some time to try to assist them as Chief Walsek would always assist us, so I appreciate his letter, but I think the most important part there is, as I said, Chief Walsek's been in the industry for a long time. He's also been a Carver resident for a long time, and his recognition of our officers and the effort that they're making to make Carver PD a better police department, a more respected police department within our community and within our community of law enforcement. It means a lot to hear that from him, because he's had a front row seat to it for quite some time. He's lived in this town for a long time. He's seen what's going on, not what's going on, but he's seen it grow. And so I really, really am very, very happy about that sentence the most. I think recognizing what our officers are doing within the community and within the department is really nice for me. So again, I appreciate you having the time to have me here, and your kind words and his kind words, but I really am happy that it's getting our officers some recognition as well.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Chief.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
And board members, anyone want to say anything? Need to put you on the spot, but. Mr. Belvin?
Yes, Chief, I want to say thank you very much for you helping our local neighbors here. But you're right, our police officers have come a long way, and it's great that they be recognized not only by our town, but by other towns. So I thank you, and I thank our officers.
Thank you, Mr.
Appreciate it.
Belvin. I completely agree. It is nice to see them recognized by another department and somebody of such stature. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, too.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work.
Okay, next we have in attendance Joan Pierce she's the Southeastern Mass Land Agent for the Mass Department of Fish and Game. She's here to discuss the option by Fish and Game to purchase from the town a parcel located at map 88, lot 3. This is a 33.4 acre parcel on Meadow Street in Carver. Said proposed sale to be considered for a 2021 ATM warrant article. And I believe I sent all of you various maps and so on and so forth. Ms. Pierce.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm here to really answer questions. Was the option given to everybody on the board?
Yes, I believe I
Okay.
attached the
Okay.
option.
Okay.
Mhm.
This is a standard document that Fish and Game uses when acquiring a piece of property. And so it's fairly straightforward. We are offering to purchase from the town this 33-acre parcel for $20,000. I picked that number. This has not been reviewed by my committee. We have a committee. But I picked the number because for one, it's not buildable. I know there's a question about the assessed value, or you probably will have a question about the assessed value, because it's about $150,000, and why am I only offering $20,000 to the town? I'm not sure why the assessed value is $150,000. The property does have a little bit of road frontage, but it's not buildable. It's very wet, has a power line going across it, and we're not going to use that road frontage for anything. It sits between two houses. So properties that cost more than $20,000, we have to hire an appraiser for. And so for this one, I didn't think it was worth us hiring an appraiser. And it's a piece of tax title land that the town has had. So that's where the number came from. And again, I'll be having a committee meeting in a week for us to look at all the different proposals that I bring for property in the Southeast. And this is something where we know the property has to be approved, not just by the Board of Selectmen, but ultimately by town meeting. And we don't know yet how much money we have available for new projects for the rest of the fiscal year. We might not, even if the town, it passes town meeting, $20,000, we may not have enough for this fiscal year, in which case we would put it on our list to purchase next fiscal year. And I'm here to answer questions.
But let me, if I may, start this off by letting you know that, I know Mr. LaFawn said this too, that probably next fiscal year is going to be more difficult for us financially. We appreciate the offer. I wanted to let the board members know that this particular parcel, and I believe I sent the map that shows it, 80 Makepeace had bought quite substantial acreage from Edaville Railroad. I can't think of the official name of it right now. And this property, so Makepeace then sold 521 acres
Something
to
like
Fish
that.
and Game. So it's an enormous protected area right around the reservoir, which wonderfully, you wouldn't know this unless you did look at the map, actually abuts our own conservation land on Savory Avenue. So if we were to sell this portion on Meadow Street to Fish and Game, we'd have this uninterrupted stretch going all the way from Savory Avenue across to Meadow Street as a place for potential outdoor recreation, hiking, the whole 9 yards. And as Joan said, it's a pretty wet piece of property. It is also, part of it has some priority habitat for rare species on it. So that also makes it special. And just preserving so much connected land is also really good for our aquifer, our
Yes.
groundwater. So those are my additions to the proposal. Are there any thoughts, comments from the board members? Mr. Belbin?
Yeah, so I'm affiliated, I'm quite familiar with this property.
Okay.
That the Fish and Game line bought from Edaville there.
Well, we bought it from 80 Makepeace.
Well, 80
Yeah.
Makepeace, yeah.
Yeah.
But it is all wetlands. The assessed value, I agree, I don't know how they come up with that amount of money. So you said this is tax title, it's in tax title property now?
Well, the town did acquire the property through tax title, and you went through land court, and the land court foreclosed the right of redemption. I have a copy of it if anybody,
Do you know when that was done?
yes, this was done back in, it says 2008.
In 2008?
Yeah, that's what I have. Now, the tax-taking process was started in 1991.
Okay.
Okay.
But it finally was taken in 2008.
Yeah, the rights of redemption foreclosed by land court in 2008.
Okay. So that actually means it's not in tax title any longer.
Right.
It was
Correct.
taken through tax title, but
Yes.
now it actually fully belongs to the town of Carver.
Yes.
So did the assessing department or our tax department, did they officially transfer it over to the town yet? When did that happen? Because,
In land court, it happened.
okay,
Maybe
because
That's fine.
I asked for documents from the assessor's office when I was with the RDA for all tax title properties, all properties owned by the town, and I went through our one, and this one didn't come up. I would have remembered this one, because I looked at large properties and I looked for wetland areas and whatnot, so I don't know where,
That's probably
Why that
because
wasn't
when
in-
you were looking it up, it was no longer in tax title. That's
right, but I
probably,
looked at town, I asked for town properties also, and like I said, I didn't see this one, but I'll just move forward with my questioning here, is that it is all wetlands. I've walked out there, my son too. Nice hunting area, too.
Thank you, yeah.
I have no problem with it. The only issue that I have, it says in the documents that it's being done by eminent domain. Is that how the process goes? or-
That is our standard process, but I have to emphasize that it's consensual taking. We're not going to come in and take the property from the town of Carver. If the Board of Selectmen doesn't agree, if town meeting doesn't approve it, it stays right where it is. But that is the document that we acquire property with, is an order of taking. But it is completely friendly,
Okay.
yeah.
And I think that's a good legal question. Presuming it's the board's desire to do this, we can certainly ensure that the town's, everything the town would need from a legal standpoint would be in order. I know you've done this with other communities, but obviously that would be the comfort level that obviously the board would need too.
Oh, absolutely.
So if this-
We are
right,
not
so
going
if this
to,
isn't the exact instrument,
oh,
whatever
no.
the instrument has to be, we can work that out as long as the,
This is just a document by which the town of Carver, in this case, says, yeah, we agree to sell this property to you. I mean, it's still subject to town meeting vote. There's no question about it. But this is our way of getting a confirmation from a seller that the seller is willing to sell, and these are the general terms and the price, things like that. And based on this document, we will then start our due diligence process of having a title exam done. And we don't want to spend that kind of money if the seller, any seller, not just the town, says, nah, we don't like this. We wait until an option is signed, and then we start our process. And if I could just say a word about the assessed value. In one of the maps, well, you can see from the assessor's map, which I have as Exhibit 2, my guess is that the assessed value probably relates to what this property was like before the final frontage lot was carved out. There were a number of A&R lots over time that have been carved out, and I suspect that the assessor's records just didn't catch up with the fact that the last frontage lot was carved out. And so it was probably based on the assumption, or at one point actual reality, that there was still a buildable house lot as part of this, but that's no longer the case. All the A&R lots have been carved out. But I think that's possibly where the assessed value comes from.
Great, thank you. Anyone else, any comments, questions? Mr. Hoffman?
A general question. Approximately how much acreage do you think that your division owns in the town right now?
Oh, wow. I could get you that answer. We have the Atwood Reservoir, WMA. I think we have public access on a pond or two.
Rocky Gutter.
That's at Middleborough.
Yeah, Rocky Gutter is in Middleborough. It's close.
Right.
And we also just acquired some property added to Rocky Gutter, but that's still in Middleborough, the Harju property. So I don't think we have much besides the Atwood Reservoir property. I think that's it, but I can get you that answer. I'll look at the maps.
It was more just I wanted, for my own general, and I'm sure people at home also wanted to know that this isn't the first time this has been done, that this is something that has been done in the past. So just want to make sure people are kind of caught up to speed on that.
Yeah, I don't know when, again, in Carver, it's something that we do, Fish and Game does all the time. We
Right.
have a budget, we have a program for acquiring open space.
Yep.
So that we absolutely do all the time. We have not done it much in Carver, but the Atwood Reservoir was a significant acquisition and expensive for us.
Yeah, I'm sure. Anyone else?
No, I don't.
Mr. Belbin?
I think the difference with this is that the Fish and Game are going to buy it from the town of Carver. The other ones they've bought from private entities.
Yes.
So this is really, I think, the first time that I know from my 20 years of being here that the town of Carver is going to transfer land from the town of Carver that we own to Fish and Game. And it actually, to be honest, I'm in favor of this just for the mere fact that it already abuts your land already.
Yeah.
And it kind of separates it too, because when you look at the map prior to this, is that you have this big open area here, then you have a small wedge that here opens up, and when you walk from one end to the other, you don't know that you're moving into town property or you're moving into something else. So this would kind of combine everything in and kind of make it look, on map-wise, nice, but it's easier for me with a GPS as I'm walking out through the woods, all right, that I can know that I am on this property. So, so thank you very much. I appreciate you bringing this to us.
Sure. No, we're glad to do it. It's sort of a big hole in the WMA, and it remains open to the public. We're, I guess, responsible for it, but it gives us a chance to get the town of Carver a little bit of money anyway for something that otherwise just sits there. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. I don't know how the board feels about doing this tonight, but I would be willing to entertain a motion to approve the option, if you would like. If not, we can consider that for next time.
I'd make a motion to accept the option.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Motion made and seconded to accept the option to sell this parcel, map 88, lot 3, to Mass Fish and Game. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passed unanimously.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
All right.
That's
Thank
wonderful.
you.
Thank
I
you.
did have a question, but
Oh,
No, I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
You-
No, go ahead.
like I said, I'm for it. I just look at the way it doesn't say vote, but it does say it at the top there.
It does. That covers everything, I
That
think.
covers everything, but, yeah. Okay, I would rather have say, I like to see each one, if you voted, we're gonna vote on this, or, so there is an intent to vote on this, not just a blanket, we could vote on any of this stuff. Just my own.
Well, now I understand.
issue,
Thank you, Mr.
but-
Galvin. But I think we're covered, though, but I appreciate what you said. Joan, how should we do this? Because this looks like a draft option.
Oh, well, let's see, we can, tomorrow, take off the word draft, and then, since there aren't any changes, then at the board's convenience, there's no crisis here, that people can sign it, and then it can be mailed to me.
Okay.
That's fine. This doesn't require notarized signature or anything like that.
You know, I obviously sent it to town
Oh,
council.
yeah,
though.
if you haven't done that already.
Right, so that would be, yeah,
That's
well,
fine.
again, until the board's intent was clear, wouldn't want to
Sure.
be spending your money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I guess I'm anticipating then that we might be able to sign it by the next meeting, February 2nd, maybe?
There's no crisis here. It's so,
Okay,
you
no, I
know.
understand. Okay.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Belvin?
Yeah, just to go through the process of this, is that we're releasing the option of keeping the land, all right? You can do your due diligence during this process, and then this is gonna go to town meeting, for
Correct.
town meeting to vote on.
Yes.
Is if we're going to sell this property to Vision Water. Once that if it's voted on, then it's now, officially you sign it off to you guys after town meeting.
Absolutely. It has to go through town meeting. I mean, I'm sure that's what your process is.
Thank you.
Yeah, and nothing, you're absolutely right. We will do our due diligence of the tax title report, but when we acquire the property by an order of taking, that does not happen until after town meeting. And it's possible, again, because I don't know how much money we have available this fiscal year, it's possible that it won't happen until we get our budget for next fiscal year.
But you would like to see a signed option?
Yes, because then we will go ahead and have our title report done.
Okay.
What we will also do is be preparing the draft order of taking, which then also gets sent to the town for the town's review. And then we have some internal process that we have to follow. We have to have our Fish and Wildlife Board approve this. It has to go through DCAM. And so we will do all of those internal steps so that depending on when we get the money, we're ready to go. And sometimes a project will fall apart at the end of a fiscal year, and our administrator will say, Joan, listen, we got $20,000, you ready to go? And then we will be all ready, and we could acquire it this fiscal year or again next fiscal year. But we will go through so that we're ready.
That's great.
Very good.
Thank you so much. Appreciate
Yeah.
you being here. Thank you.
Yeah. No, glad to do it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks very much.
Next up, Route 44 development update. I guess that's you, Mr. LaFawn?
Yes, and this will be very brief. I've talked to the proponents, Mr. McLaughlin and Mr. Delholm. Again, very happy to do a presentation for the board, hoping to do via Zoom. Unfortunately, that really hasn't been the way we've done business that often. They will be meeting with the redevelopment authority again in February. So I don't know if maybe something we want to do as a joint meeting, or if it's just an invitation to their meeting. I suspect that the redevelopment authority will be meeting via Zoom, just based upon the people who are on that committee. So that would be the easy way to do it. But to the extent that you might want to give some thought to whether or not you want to do it as like I said, as a joint meeting, or just as participants, whatever the case is, because I think obviously Zoom would be a good option for all involved. So that's, like I said, I don't want anyone to think that they're not prepared or willing to speak to this board, in fairness to them. So, I mean, as of today, one of the big administrative issues is making sure they're paying their money to the town for the engineering and consulting oversight that's necessary. So, as of the end of last week, they have given the town a very big check for that. So, but I don't think I think it's best to have them give you the update themselves on the actual progress to date, because it's pretty imminent. I can get I forget the exact date of the redevelopment authority meeting, but give some thought to that. I think that's probably the best way to do it. Like I said, they're willing to come in, but they're not that local. So,
Great, okay. And when is the RDA meeting? Do you know? Or-
no.
Okay, that's fine.
I was just running that through my head right now too. It's February. I'll get that
Okay.
for you.
We can find out, yeah.
Usually Elaine knows all those things. I won't put the heat on you there. So,
Okay, thank you. Next, CMAS trash disposal agreement?
yes, I have a memo in front of you, but in essence, the agreement that we have, the draft in front of you, is the agreement that is in place for Marion, Wareham, as well as the district itself. As we all are painfully aware, at the end of this past calendar year, the agreement with CMAS expired, and as of now, we're all required to actually spend money to get rid of our trash. So that includes the town. Well, up until at this moment, there isn't an actual agreement between the town and CMAS for accepting our refuse. So in conversation with CMAS and some of our, again, neighbors, this is the exact same agreement that everybody has. I believe the district has also executed this. I know Marion and Wareham already have within the last week or two. So this, basically, in a nutshell, what you see here are the terms of financial terms for the next 5 years. It's going to cost the town a few $1,000s, but nothing onerous. We're not a huge client here. So if O&M, John Woods, has to send people to get rid of municipal trash, we kind of have to have an agreement in place, so.
Yeah, definitely. Now, is this, and I know by reading your memo, this was something that you recommend we vote to approve,
Yes,
contract?
yes.
Do I have a motion to vote to approve the CMAS contract?
Make a motion to approve.
Is there a second? Mr. Belvin?
Yes. So this agreement was crafted by the district to protect the district. When we were thinking about keeping the district running as a transfer station, this was worked out with CMAS. It's a really good rate for what other municipalities or other trash haulers are going to be paying for it. I know one of these was, when we did have discussions, is that each individual town, if we wanted to pick a preferred hauler program, that one preferred hauler could receive this rate, just one. So just to bear in mind, that was the intent, that if the town decided to go with a single hauler system, that only one single hauler would get this rate for all the tonnage that goes from the town of Carver to CMAS. It's a decent rate for going forward. In case anything happens with us, that we have this in place, and it covers us for 5 years. I think it's a great tool that we can use in the future. We're not going to use it now, except for our local trash from our town, but it's a decent rate if we go anything further. I do have a question that kind of goes along with this, is that the issue of tonnage for the town, and we charge haulers tonnage fee, and one of the questions I've been asked by a couple of different people is that tonnage fee going to increase, and what do the local towns pay for tonnage that we charge to the haulers here in town? Right now, at $30, it's, quote, low, but I think that's something we have to look at also, that goes along with this, is that how much we're charging our haulers that are in our town to pick up trash in our town, to have services here in our town. The trash that goes to CMAS or wherever, that we get a tonnage report and we get money that comes in, is that tonnage amount fee at $30 reasonable, or should it be on the higher end? It's about $100,000 a year, 120. It fluctuates back and forth, but I think this year, because more people have moved to trash haulers, that tonnage amount's going to be increased. So we're probably going to have some more cash flow coming in from the haulers. So I kind of would like to see where we're at with that, and how we go about increasing the tonnage amount or decreasing it.
Thank you, Mr. Belvin.
Sounds like you're asking me to do some homework, Bob, is that,
I mean,
just say yes, I'm happy to do it.
well, it's just the fact that I think that we should be looking at all avenues of this, and we're not doing our due diligence if we're not.
That's a good point, though. I don't know historically, I believe that's been set by the Board of Health and not the Select Board over the years. I don't recall this ever coming up to the Board of Selectmen. So let me look into that, Bob. But
Thank you.
and thanks for that background. It obviously goes well beyond my experience here. So
Thank you.
I would just ask that with that motion, if you could, in doing so, also just authorize the chair to sign on behalf of the board, because there's only one line.
Oh, okay. All right, Mrs. Bogart.
How much trash did the town get rid of last year? Well, you said it's gonna be a few thousand, so, 77, 65 a ton, like.
I
oh my
believe
God.
John Woods told me it was, I think he said it was only around 15 tons last year. Most of it's in the summertime,
Yeah,
with the beaches and parks, so it's not that much, but the trucks can't get in without the agreement, so. Yeah, so again, it's not a financial burden, it's more of an agreement that allows us to access the site.
Great, thank you. Okay, next item is discussion,
we gonna vote on it?
oh, sorry, yeah, there was a motion and a second. Thank you, Mr. Belbin. Motion and a second, no further discussion?
Did someone have to amend
Thank you.
the motion?
Yeah, did you wanna
Yes,
amend
let's
Bob?
amend the motion to, Mr. LaFawn wants to have just the chair sign
And to
it.
authorize the chair to sign.
I'll take that as a friendly emotion,
Yeah, and I'll second.
amendment.
Thank you.
at 5:30.
Okay. Motion to approve the CMAS trash disposal amendment, agreement as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you.
And Elaine informs me that the RDA meeting is February 9th at 5:30.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Elaine. Okay, the next item, discussion on the interim town administrator's 6-month evaluation by select board members. Board members will have the opportunity to discuss their informal evaluation of the interim TA's responses. So a couple of months back, we formulated our questions for Mr. LaFond to answer. He answered them at great length. And then we all had a sit-down with him, presumably, or we each did. And so this is everyone's chance to just discuss their opinions, takes, issues, questions, about that whole, all those responses from Mr. LaFawn. I'm going to start backwards this time. Mr. Townsend, would you like to start us off?
Sure.
I only meant backwards alphabetically.
I understand. Do you want to wait for Mr. LaFawn to return?
Yeah, look, here he is.
So I guess, do you want to discuss each individual questions, or you're looking for just an overview?
However you want to do it, Mark.
Okay, that's fine. I'm not sure it's, at least on my part, it's necessary to discuss each individual question. I did sit down with Mr. LaFawn and discuss his time here. But I've had regular discussions with Mr. LaFawn right along. We sit down on a pretty regular basis, every couple of weeks or so, and I found Mr. LaFawn very open, very willing to discuss things. We have a good back and forth. I think he came to Carver at a difficult time with the onset of COVID just before town meeting, and I think he's worked hard to help Carver weather the storm. So, I think as we get to the end of his first year, we'll have to do a little more detailed evaluation. But I think Mr. LaFawn has worked hard to help guide our town, and I'm happy with where we're at. So I guess that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Mr. Hoffman?
Being my first evaluation, it was interesting. The informal formal evaluation. But no, kind of echo what Mr. Townsend said, the same thing. If I have issues, I always more than readily available on phone or in person, so that I have no problems with that. And again, did come in at a tough time, and I think he's doing a good job. And I think all the questions were answered properly. I noticed a few questions were different ways of asking the same thing, so that was,
Yeah.
and your answers were consistent, so that's good. But no, it's tough to do something like that, but I appreciate all the answers for that, and they were very in-depth, so thank you for that.
Great, thanks, Mr. Hoffman. Mrs. Bogart?
Oh, I thought you'd be next alphabetically.
No, I'm last.
All right. Yeah, I mean, you guys know I'm question askers, and if you look at the document he sent out on the 6th, like, a lot of these are my questions.
Yeah, you made me do a lot of work.
But I appreciate that you answered all of them really thoroughly. And you did that when we sat and talked, too. Like, you didn't shy away from questions, which I think was great, and I appreciate. And we did talk about, things that I think were going really well. And then I did raise some concerns that I had, too. And you remember I said, I want to make sure that there is full transparency and trust. Because I had raised a concern with the way that the police committee kind of came about out of nowhere. We didn't really know it. We've kind of seen committees show up before as a town and not really knowing. So said in the next 6 months, would really love to see full transparency, trust, like, just let's get there with relationships, like, just full trusting. Because I think we need that as a town. And there's more thoughts in my head. I'm losing them, so go to Bob or something.
Thank you, Mrs. Bogart. Mr. Belvin?
Hi. So I didn't give him any questions to Mr. Vaughn. We had a nice long talk about what he's done well, that since he's come here, and he has done some really good things in this town, made the employees a little more relaxed. The overall tone around Town Hall is a lot better than it was. Although there's bumps in the road no matter what on anything, but on any change, but there is a much better sense of teamwork around the town hall, and I like that. I like the idea of people being not walking on eggshells. I do like that. So I think, thank you very much. You've done a really good job in that point. The one issue that I do have is on communication, and we did talk about that, because communications is a two-way street. If I come up with an issue or whatnot, I have no problem bringing it up to Rick. That's why I think we have an open communication, which is, I don't know if it's surprising to Rick at all with me from his prior term of being here and me being a pain in the butt. But even still, it's that I think we have a decent relationship going back and forth for it. One of the bad things about communication here was with the district, with Wareham, and knowing that what the budget would be for the district at town meeting. That morning it was there. He had access to it, and it did not get to me until later that night at town meeting. Had I had that in the morning, I would have been a little more open to our local finance committee to let them, hey, this is what it is, so you get at least an understanding prior to it. So there was a little disadvantage there of not getting that information, which I felt was important, information that I should have had. But overall, I like that he's come prepared. If I've asked him to do anything, he's done it, and he's been complete. And I've told him the same thing I'll tell everyone else. I says, if I'm doing something wrong or you don't like what I'm doing, tell me. Okay? So it's not just me telling him, but it's also him telling me. So I think that was good. So that's where I stand with this. So thank you very much, Rick.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Belvin. I decided that I had to write mine down because it's just easier for me. So I'm just going to read this, and then I'll give it to you, Elaine. There are three areas of strength that I see in Mr. LaFawn's answers to the informal evaluation questions posed by members of the Select Board, and one point of improvement that I think could be made. The three areas of strength are interpersonal relationships with employees, the public, and the Select Board, financial management / municipal administration, and the public and their relationship to town government. So just take each of these three in order. Rick LaFawn has a respect for and an understanding of employees in all levels of town government. Time and again, his responses to the Select Board's questions are filled with phrases that indicates this respect, such as, and I quote, and I'm doing this partly because I know the public didn't get to, it's a public document, but they haven't seen our questions or the answers. So these are some quotes. Providing department heads with more flexibility and less micromanagement. Department heads and employees at all levels of government are worried. These are quotes from Rick. Maintaining a positive attitude, cheerfulness, and genuine concern for employees and their families can't be stressed enough. And my personal favorite, and I quote, I also want people who work for the town to believe that this environment is healthy for them, a place they would like to be 5 days a week. I enjoy supporting and acknowledging the jobs that people do, whether it's permitting, voting, complaints, etc. It's too easy to forget how important what we do here impacts people's lives. It's a very refreshing set of quotes, I think. Mr. LaFawn makes himself available and visible, as he puts it, to employees. I can attest to a renewed sense of good morale among town employees. It's quite clear he understands that, quote, one of his jobs is to keep them, town employees, to help them do theirs as well as possible. He's also done considerable outreach to members of boards, committees, and current and former town officials for perspective and guidance on how things have changed since his last tenure in Carver. Mr. LaFawn also makes himself available to members of the public and tries to address their concerns or complaints in a timely fashion, and personally. I find that he is careful to avoid even the appearance of politicking, which, if done by an interim town administrator or town administrator, could cause a deep distrust of their government by the public. I'll say a little bit more about this later on. And despite the difficulties surrounding COVID, by his attendance at a variety of community events, Mr. LaFawn has shown his dedication to the town that's certainly not required in his job description. Mr. LaFawn's relationships with select board members are, in my opinion, similar to his relationships with employees and the public. He has an open door policy 24/7, and as he says, he, quote, takes criticism well and invites comments and feedback. Taking criticism well is a hard quality to come by in anyone, but especially in someone in his position and with his knowledge. He is also, quote, careful not to disagree with a member or members of the board unless absolutely necessary. nor does he, quote, place himself in a position that is higher than the Select Board. I believe his respect for our elected roles is very real and is true across the board, no matter who fills those positions, and I, for one, appreciate that respect. On the other hand, sometimes Mr. LaFawn's respect and deferential treatment of the Select Board members and of members of others' committees and boards result in periods of non-communication between him and others who know his door is open but may not realize that more communication would be beneficial to both parties. Perhaps Mr. LaFawn should be more proactive by setting up regular individual meetings with board and committee members who are not currently in more regular communication with him. This was the second strength, financial management / municipal administration. This again is a quote, mentoring and investing in training for those who wish to grow within the organization and planning for management succession within departments show Mr. LaFawn's attention to detail that should not be seen as cost sinks, but instead as constantly improving the quality of our services to the public. Realizing early on that, quote, furloughs were instituted earlier than necessary, were premature, and were not instituted after proper impact bargaining with the clerical union, Mr. LaFawn immediately engaged in discussions with the unions to help resolve both financial and personal issues. On the solar pilot programs, he says exempting real estate taxes through a pilot agreement is not permissible. Mr. LaFawn caught early on the misunderstanding in some of our solar project agreements, which none of the rest of us caught at the time of the agreements were made, that has resulted in some solar project owners contending that they don't owe real estate taxes, a potentially significant revenue loss for the town that Mr. LaFawn is currently working to resolve. Almost finished. Mr. LaFawn's almost 30 years in municipal administration and financial management has helped the town tremendously. Since he has managed other budgets through multiple downturns, he was able to balance our budgets during the significant COVID downturn. He also started our Gateway Health Group about 18 years ago and was promptly elected chair of the group when he returned to Carver. He then helped within this Gateway Health Care group to keep other towns from leaving the group, thus stabilizing our own town's healthcare costs. His experience ensures that he also understands the cost effectiveness of, quote, our fire and EMS services that simply can't be matched and must be maintained with as little disruption as possible while making every effort to protect the viability of all our other departments. Such insight, I believe, is a function of years of municipal experience, but is also a function of Mr. LaFawn's not wanting to fix something that's not broken and not tinkering with something that's running well. And the last item is the public and their relationship to town government. This item is harder to pin down, but is probably one of Mr. LaFawn's most important assets. It's a combination of both good interpersonal skills and financial management skills that I believe results in the public having more trust in their local government. It's clear that he knows he represents the town at all times and must not show favoritism or take sides or politic in any way. As Mr. LaFawn puts it, my role is to try to facilitate a positive conclusion to matters, and acting in a measured, professional way is important for keeping the organization as unified as possible. When we met about his responses to our questions, Mr. LaFawn said this: budgets aren't about money, they're about people. I think that speaks volumes for the management style, both personal and financial, and the unity that he works to bring to our town. So, thank you. I lost my...
Madam Chair, are you done?
Yeah, I most certainly
Okay, my
am.
words came back. Like, one of the first things Bob said, and I said it like, Rick is completely approachable. Like, I've never been concerned walking up to the guy like, I have felt in the past.
Oh, yeah.
So that's huge, and he's smiling too, and like, I'm always smiling. I like to make you guys laugh.
That's because you bring your daughters with you.
Yeah.
Got to be on my best behavior, Jeff.
No, but seriously, like, he's so approachable, and that's huge because not only does it make work, like you want to work with someone that you can talk to. So that's a huge plus.
Yeah.
Something that that I had brought up in the questions and then talked to him about was the whole taking the path of least resistance. And I'm concerned that sometimes maybe how often do you take that path? If you know something has to be changed or is wrong, maybe sometimes you can't take that path and you got to be a little stronger or act quicker. So we had a good little talk about that. And I would like to see consistency in balancing the strength and definitive actions versus not being, attacking and dominating, which we don't want to see.
Right.
So that's something that I had said too, like, I'd like to see that.
So if I may, I
Yeah.
personally don't think, was the phrase taking path of least resistance?
Yeah.
Is that what you said? Mr. LaFont also says in his responses that he does not compromise his principles. So that may be a management style that has worked in some cases that we just don't know all the details. I don't know. But I just wanted to make that very clear.
Yeah.
Doing that does not mean he's,
First of all, I very much appreciate all of your comments, but, to that point, Jen and I had a good discussion about this. I think it's one of those situations where you know where you want to be, and it's how do you get there? And to try to get there in a way that tries to maintain as much stability, as much unity as possible, is worth a little extra time, in my opinion. It is, it's citizen government, it's community government. You're dealing with that, you're dealing with, obviously trying to get things done, you're dealing with operations, you're dealing with, human beings. So it's not always one formula to get from A to Z. So, and there can be criticism anytime with anybody as to the best way to get from one point to another. But I think it's important to know that, you commit to the end game, but there may be different paths depending on what those issues are. Again, to try to maintain, we'll say, the operating structure and conditions as well as possible. So, like I say, doesn't mean you always do it right, but it's always something that needs to be considered. And sometimes it does slow things down, and sometimes things take care of themselves if we let them.
Right.
So, but yeah, we did have a good conversation about that, yes.
thank you. The next item,
Could I say one thing?
oh, yes, please, Mr.
First of
LaFont.
all, I appreciate your thoughts and your feedback, in an ongoing manner, by the way. I think it's nice to hear people think they can just walk in and, if you want to hit me over the head, that's fine. I can take it. But I have to say, from the last decade in this business, this is about as a we'll say unified board as I've seen in about a decade. So it's very nice to work with a group who kind of has that spirit of cooperation, even though God knows you guys disagree on a lot, that's a good thing, but you do it well. One of the things I mentioned in my responses, and I think it was a question by Mark about what can the board do, and I'm very, because all of you have seen it in different paths in your own lives, that the board really does set the tone for the government. And it doesn't matter if it's other elected boards or committees, this is the board that sets the tone. And the tone you set can be very critical in how me and the staff can successfully do our jobs. So when you can agree and disagree like ladies and gentlemen, when you can show a sense of camaraderie even through the good times, the bad times, the agreements, disagreements, it makes a difference. And that can get lost, I think. That can get lost on people. So I think that was an important reflection that I was asked to comment on. And I will leave it at that. Thank you, Sarah.
Well, I appreciate that comment. I'm sure the other board members do too. The next item is a discussion and possible vote to make changes to Chapter 1 of the town bylaws. Anyone like to start that off?
Sure.
Mr. Belvin?
So I'm the one that brought this forward. I haven't heard from anyone pertaining to what I've actually put on here, except for the clerks of not changing it from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. That's the only one about this. What I do want to say is that the moderator, I had email discussions back and forth with him. And what I've said is that we should have a postmortem, which brings in all of the players of a town meeting to go through what happened at our last town meeting. And I wanted it done in public setting, so everyone can see what's being done, what was said, what are the possible changes or whatnot could come through, and it doesn't seem like that's going to happen. My feeling is that the Board of Selectmen, these changes here, still have to go to town meeting. All right, this would have to come into a town meeting vote. It's not just like we're just going to go ahead and change the bylaws. It's got to go to town meeting. It's got to have public hearings to go forward. But one of the email discussions, and these are all public records that goes back, kind of irritated me a little bit. And I'm just going to read this one little portion. It says, "It is not you or the select board's job or right to develop procedures for town meeting. That's my job." That's out of this whole thing, that's the one thing that irks me here, is that I have given him my thoughts and opinions on this. I think it needs to be put out to the public, all right? The changes, what I've put in here, I think will help town meeting to have some more control in the voting process. And I'm free to make any changes to any of this for anybody. I don't have a problem with it. I'd like your support to go forward and this not be the final one, but to turn around and say, okay, any changes that you want to make, let's make them and whatnot. And if the clerk wants to come, if the moderator wants to come, if the public wants to come, you want to come and make changes of that, we can do it in one of two ways. Do it before we vote on anything, or we turn around and we vote on this and make the changes after the public hearing session, that we take everyone's information, we change what we change, and then bring it to town meeting, okay? You can vote against it, okay? But it only takes one person to implement change. It takes one person to stand up and say, I don't think it's right. We need to do something else. My biggest point on this is that we had so many people that went to town meeting, but we had a vote that was higher than the amount of people that came to town meeting. That's a serious flaw in our system of voting. No matter what anybody says, you have so many people come, but you have more voters. How can that happen? You need to have a process, and that's what I tried to do here, is to create a process. Some of the other changes in here was to help open up more debate, not limit debate. Because the 3-minute time frame for limiting debate, I think, is wrong. Because the government can turn around, being us, can go up there and say and speak as long as you want, and then lo and behold, you get 3 minutes, your 3 minutes is done, see you later. You can only come up 3 times, but one of that issue is that you go up and you speak, you turn around and say, okay, somebody else says something that you can contradict, or you have something, other information about, and then you go up and do that, and then you go sit down and find out, oh, well, I got some more stuff I want to talk about, that you may have information after that fact, that's something different, but you can't go up there and speak to it because you already had you 2 times. That's wrong. Okay? And that is addressed in this. So it's up to this board of what they want to do and how they want to handle this, but I think that it only takes one person to start change, all right? It takes all of us to implement that change. I put it out there, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Feldman. Anyone else?
Madam Chair?
Mr. Townsend?
I think at the last meeting, when we discussed this, we talked about inviting the moderator to join us for the discussion. Do we know, was he invited to this meeting?
I know he was forwarded the information, I'm not sure. He's aware of this and was forwarded to him. I don't know if we actually have a specific invite, though, if that was.
I guess my
and I
only thoughts would
apologize.
be, you know, just like we're elected by the town, the moderator's elected by the town, he's not appointed, he's elected.
Correct.
And I just, respectfully, Bob, I understand where you're coming from with these things, but I just think that he should be included in these discussions. He is elected by the town, so
Right.
I don't think these discussions should take place without the moderator present.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. I agree with you, and that's with respect, Bob, but I do agree. I believe the rest of you probably got a phone call from the moderator. He said he was going to get in touch with individual board members and have discussions. We had a very good discussion. The first thing I want to remind us all of is that these things in Chapter 1, a lot of them were voted on at town meeting in 2019. So these are things that at least the town meeting at that time wanted to see happen. Do I like all of them? No, but that's what town meeting voted, you know? I also believe that since the town meeting is the moderator's meeting, that either he should be here, which I'm pretty sure he was aware that we were discussing this.
Well,
He's talked to us all.
Yeah.
So I think.
I'll follow up with him, though, to make sure.
Well, yeah, so I'm just suggesting that perhaps he doesn't want to do this way. And I think that's his prerogative. It is his meeting. There are aspects of it that pertain to the town clerk, and it would be good to include her as well. But again, it's the moderator's meeting. So I personally am not comfortable approving changes to this, you know, without that. That's just that's my take on it. Mr. Hoffman.
I just have a question. You said that 2019, some of these new bylaws were voted in.
In Chapter 1, yeah.
Chapter
The
1.
number of times people could speak and so on and so forth, which I really had a long conversation with him about. I told him I didn't like his stoplight, okay?
Yeah.
I told him, and he took it very well. It was a very congenial conversation, very friendly. I told him that I think it should be, that he said that he understood that sometimes people had something to say and weren't allowed to speak for more time. So what I said was, maybe you should phrase that question differently. Instead of saying, do you have anything new? They might be thinking of a new way of saying the same thing. And it could be that, you know, Jen's new way of saying the same thing will convince all of us, even though we've all said the opposite. You just never know. I mean, it's happened. I've seen it happen at town meeting. One person gets up and the vote is different. And so he was very open to some of the changes that I threw out there. They're just my personal pet peeves, you know. So, yeah. Anybody else? I don't know where we're going with this.
Just want
Yeah,
to follow
Mr.
up.
Yes.
So my question is, the changes that were made in 2019, how did that get brought about? Was that the select board?
No, it was the town moderator. He actually brought them to the select board, walked us through them, said that as the moderator, he wanted to introduce these changes to town meeting, and town meeting actually voted them in at town meeting. He did say that, in his opinion, he could implement the changes himself without having bringing it to town meeting vote, but he wanted to bring it to them because, you know, it's also their meeting, town meeting's meeting. So yeah, he brought it to us right before town meeting, whenever you were there.
Yeah.
And so were you, Bob. And he kind of walked us through them, as I say, and then brought it to town meeting, and they implemented it.
Okay, because to be honest with you, I don't really feel comfortable suggesting changes to an elected official that's in charge. His domain, or if you want to, jurisdiction is the town meeting.
Right.
If we have questions, approach him on a one-on-one basis,
Right.
and then let him come up with some suggestions type thing.
I agree.
I just know if someone came to us, I would be offended by that.
Yeah.
And again, and like Mr. Townsend said, he is an elected official.
He's an elected official.
And that is his, I don't want to use jurisdiction, his
Yeah.
town
His
meeting.
domain.
That's
So,
right.
you know, that's the only thing I have a problem with. I understand your concerns, and I agree with some of them, but again, I don't think it's our place to do that.
Right.
We can suggest it and, meet with an individual, and then let him be the one to do that.
Right. Yeah.
That's just how I feel on this issue.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. Mrs. Bogart?
I personally, I actually see two places I'd like this changed, and I hope they're not controversial ones. But last time I had asked if there was a reason the meeting had to be on a weekday. And I think the response was, well, because it hasn't really worked on a weekend, but there wasn't like a legal reason it had to be. So I would love to see that just taken out from the bylaw. Why limit us to have to be a weekday? We don't have to schedule it on a weekday, but let's not limit ourselves. And I've spoken to a couple people, including someone involved with town meeting, and they think that it should be available, an available option. And I actually saw later on our agenda, set date for annual town meeting, proposed dates Monday, Tuesday, or Saturday. Well, according to this bylaw, we can't even consider that Saturday. So I would love to see this bylaw changed and take it out so that it can just be in the month of April, May, or June on a day to be set by the select board. I don't know why we would want to limit ourselves. And then at a past town meeting, I know, kind of going with how we've talked about how many times someone can talk, I remember I had made a motion to, I forget the wording I said, but it ended up being approved, that you could yield your time to someone else. I had seen them do it in Congress. So you stand up, you talk, and if I use 30 seconds and Jim wants to talk again, but he's already had his 2 times, I'll yield my time to Jim to let him talk. And I think this would be an appropriate change because it was approved by town meeting at that time. It's just not cauterized in the bylaw. So I actually see an opportunity to make changes to the bylaw without maybe stepping on the moderator's toes like it seems there's concern for it. So I'd like to see us talk about this and make changes like that.
Did you mention that to the moderator when you spoke with him?
I don't remember.
Okay. Mr. Belvin?
Okay, so one of the other emails that I did get, he pretty much said he is not going to come to a selectmen's meeting and discuss this. All right, so I understand your point, but anybody in this town can bring modifications to our town meeting, all right, of our bylaws. Anyone can do it, all right? I brought it here as a leader of this town, that there were issues at town meeting that need to be resolved. I have not heard the moderator or anyone else address the issues that says, how do we fix the issue of the numbers in the votes and how that came about, okay? Not one person has done that. No one's come to me and said, Mr. Belvin, you are right, there is an issue here, all right, it needs to be fixed, okay? I've come to take the bull by the horns and brought forth this. Okay, I brought forth this for us to talk about, to discuss. We've invited the moderator to come in to discuss it, all right? The clerk's office too. I think we should have a meeting. I've said this numerous times. I think we should have a meeting with everybody in the same room, okay? Because we're part of the process, okay? And part of the process is that if we think we need something changed, then we should go ahead and put it out there, and that's what I have done. And if the moderator doesn't like it, so be it, okay? But I may not like how he's handled things, but the bottom line here is that if he wants to come here and discuss this and look at this and say, okay, fine, there are issues, how can we fix it? That's what I'm looking at, how we fix it, okay? We already have a bylaw in place about town meeting, okay? Our bylaw clearly states this. And one of the things is it states that we will use Robert's Rules of Order. But the first thing he stated at town meeting was that he's going to use town meeting time and Robert's Rules of Order through his rules. But that's not what our bylaw says. So if he's going to use both of them, then we got to change the bylaw for that. okay? So this is an opportunity to elicit communication between him, the Board of Selectmen, the clerks, and everyone else. And that's why it's so important that the Mass Moderators Association says that after town meeting, there should be a post-mortem discussion, which includes the Board of Selectmen.
I think
It
it says there
includes it.
can be. It doesn't say there should be. Well, that's different.
In all actuality, if there's something going on, if there's something wrong, you really should have one. All the people that are there should be part of it. Say, how do we fix this? And that's what I did. I put together something to how to fix it. You may not like it, fine. Well, let's change it. That's why I put it out there, okay? You don't want to vote on it, fine, don't vote on it. You want to pass it over and let him have an opportunity to come forward and take a look at it, have the clerks look at it and say, okay, fine, I have no problem with that. We got plenty of time before town meeting. But we cannot have town meeting this year coming that there's going to be issues with the vote count for different articles that come before this town. We can't. We have to make sure that it's accurate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Belbin.
One quick question.
Yes, Mr. Hoffman.
Have you approached the town moderator with these suggestions, one-on-one?
Through a discussion on the phone we had once, but then I put everything on writing because one of the things I said is that if I have a one-on-one talk with him on something, I don't want people to come back at me and say, hey, he's doing backroom deals here with this other elected official to change things. That's why I want it open in the open. Everyone sees what's going on. There's nothing behind closed doors. There's not, well, she has this opinion, you have this opinion, he has this opinion and this, and then lo and behold, the only things that gets approved are hers and his and not the other people's, when in all actuality, the rationale for this is clear of what I did, all right, is to try to elicit some change, some communication between people, let people know, hey, come discuss these issues. Come before the Board of Selectmen, okay? Have a seat with us. You're on the same playing field. You're an elected official. Come, be part of it.
I appreciate that, Mr. Belbin. However, I don't appreciate the insinuation that because one or more of us spoke to the town moderator, that there was some backdoor deal going on. That certainly was not the case. There was no backdoor deal going on. We were having a discussion. You chose to put it in writing, that's fine.
But I'm just, like I said.
Okay, I think
Do you want-
I heard you.
Do you understand that you had your opinion of things? Okay, fine. That may go into some possible changes that he may want to make for a change of our town bylaws, but let's see it. Let's
Okay.
discuss it.
Thank you, Mr. Belbin.
I just, and again, I just don't like the idea. It's almost like we're ganging up on him if, as a select board doing that. Individual, if all five of us want to individually do that, I think that's a better way to do that. But all of a sudden, he's the select board, you come before us. Well, first of all, it's his, again, it's his jurisdiction, his domain, whatever the word you want to use. And I think by presenting it to him like you did, that's the way to do it. But trying to say, oh, now you're going to come before the select board, I just don't like that, because if the roles were reversed, I'd be pretty upset about that.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to point that, devil's advocate on that point of view. Not, him or any other committee or person that's elected. I just don't think that's the right way to do it. I agree with some of these changes. You're right. Some issues were done, and I think that things have to be changed. I think that's the way to do it, to approach them with the ideas and then talk about it.
Thank
But,
you.
okay.
No, go ahead, finish.
That's the only thing that rubs me the wrong way is just as a board, it's almost like you're getting called before the principal now. But we're all elected officials.
Right.
So, that's just my opinion.
Thank you.
Oops, sorry. Can I raise my hand?
Mrs. Bogart?
Well, okay, changing, what do you guys think about my two ideas? Like letting it be on a weekend? No?
I have no problem.
I'm not saying we'll schedule it for it, but I just don't know why we would eliminate it. Do you guys not want to change it to even allow it to be on the weekend?
Well, first of all, I think we should find out whether the other elected officials involved can do it on a weekend. I mean, there may have been some past thing where, I just don't know. I'm not saying there was, but I'm unaware of why Saturday was taken off the off the table. I have no idea.
Yeah.
And if I could just
Mr.
say, I
LaFawn.
think, I'm not advocating for that or against it, but I certainly like the board to have as much leeway as possible. I think that's a different issue. That's not the conduct of the meeting, you
Right.
know, and I think most of what the concern here is,
Yeah.
is dealing with, having, advising the moderator, or trying to, pass new laws, bylaws, regulations that impact the conduct of the meeting rather than, when the meeting may be. I think those are two separate issues.
It was just all part of chapter one. If we're talking about editing chapter one, that's why I thought, and again, I think it's a
Yeah.
little less controversial point that maybe would be more well-received. And then also the point with yielding time. I mean, that's a common thing in politics. So would you guys be open to codifying it? So every meeting, I don't have to stand up and make the motion to let people yield their time?
Well, again, I think that's part of the conduct of the meeting. You might want to run that by the moderator, because that's a conduct of the meeting item as opposed to what day of the week we're going to meet.
Yeah.
So,
But if town meeting voted to support it last time,
mm-hmm.
then maybe town meeting would support it in perpetuity. Because it wasn't, last time he put it to a vote, and
Yeah.
town meeting approved that process.
correct.
So why don't we put it in here so town meeting can vote on it once?
So I would suggest that you ask the moderator if he'd be willing to do that.
Well, wouldn't it have to go in here?
It
In
it
the-
would, but once again, as Mr. Hoffman pointed out, I personally don't want to tell the moderator how to conduct his meeting. So if he's willing to agree to that change, if he thinks it's a great idea, then we could vote on that particular change. I just wanted to run it by him first. That's all.
Well, because I'm thinking of not just this specific moderator, because he's only elected for a certain amount of time. So that I've kind of taken him out of all of this discussion as Bob and everyone's talking. I'm not thinking of, I'm not thinking of Mr. Clancy and this stuff. I'm thinking guidance for town meeting and any moderator we have in the future. This is kind of what we as a town would like to see our town meetings look like. So they don't change based on who's the moderator that year.
No, I hear you. I agree. I know exactly what you're saying, but again, we may be talking in general, but we happen to have a specific moderator whose meeting it is. And now if we're voting on to change the way his meeting operates, that's something he should, at least that discussion with him should be had. That's my opinion.
Okay.
So, one more thing, Mr. Belbin?
Yeah, are we now saying that the only person that can bring changes regarding town meeting process is the moderator? Is that what we're saying now?
Are you asking me?
I'm just putting it out there to other members. I mean,
Well, so let me give you my answer, which I think I've said a number of times. That's my opinion. Other people may have different opinions. If any citizen can bring a citizen's petition article, so things can happen that way, but I don't want to speak for the rest of the board. Mr. Townsend?
Oh, thank you, Madam Moderator. I would just say that whether I agree or disagree, the moderator is elected by the people of Carver to run town meeting. So as far as the operation of town meeting, I think any changes in that should come from the moderator. And I think if a citizen wants a change, they should either reach out to the moderator, or they should bring a citizen's petition to be acted on by town meeting. But the moderator is elected to run town meeting. He's elected to do that. So we didn't choose that. He's elected by the people of Carver, and I think that's just my opinion.
Okay. And so, Mr. LaFawn, you feel that we could actually just take the word weekday out of there and make it any day specified?
Well, you'd have to change the bylaw, but I just trying to differentiate between, what would be the conduct of the meeting, and I'm coming up with these terms myself, conduct of the meeting versus, time, date, those types of things.
Administrators.
Yeah. There are those types of things that I think need to be within the realm of the select board, because who knows what the conditions may be. I mean, especially these times, an example, it may be an extreme time, but you know, a lot of towns are doing some, you know, creative things with how and where and when they're holding town meetings, and, you know, you don't know what's gonna come up in the future, so to have a bylaw that restricts those types of things, I don't know that that's necessary, like I said, and I'm biased because I like select boards to have as much, you know, leeway as possible. That's part of my role. So I just differentiate between those things, but once again, you know, if the board feels that's something that's, you know, important to deal with this year, that's fine, we can work to do that. But again, conduct of the meeting, I think that's a different issue, and how you choose to deal with it is obviously different than something as like Jen's raising right now.
All right, so I will entertain a motion about this item, possible changes to Chapter 1 in the town bylaws.
I make a motion, we approve, actually, stop. I make no motion. I wish that this be carried over to allow other elected or appointed officials to come forward and to discuss this at future meetings.
Thank you, Mr. Belbin. Are there any other motions anyone else would like to make on this topic? Mrs. Bogart?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know if it's the same as him, but I guess I would motion to continue this discussion. Because I think back of when Bob had brought up the talk about creating the bylaw review committee, and it ended up getting shot down in here. And I forget, it was said at some point, like, well, maybe, I forget who said it, but one of us said to Bob, and tell me to stop talking about you if you want me to, like, you can bring these bylaws to us every time, bring them one at a time, we'll look at them one at a time. I'm almost feeling like we're telling Bob you can't do that.
No, that's not the case.
It kind of feels that way, like he brought it to us and now we're saying, well, we're not going to listen to you, we got to talk to this guy. And
This is only one, these are only a few bylaws out of one chapter. So
Yeah, I just don't want to make him feel that way because it's something we, you know, that
Bob's
that
tough.
the board
He'll be
agreed
okay.
on, you know? But I would like to continue this talk. If no other changes are made, I'd like to find a pathway to get weekends on the table. If
Well, I would
nothing
entertain,
else.
I can entertain a motion to change the wording to just say weekday.
Okay.
A day of the week.
Okay, then I will make a motion to change the wording of 1.1.1 to say, in the month of April, May, or June, on a day to be set by the select board. So take out the week in weekday.
Is there a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Belvin.
So instead of me going ahead and saying, okay, let's wait, talk to anyone else that wants to discuss this at the future, and just to parlay that, also to say this, that if no one comes forward that wants to talk about it, then it's a dead issue. That's just my opinion, okay? Put it out there. Hopefully they would for discussion purposes, but not. But also with this motion to take it piecemeal, then I would have to say that we'd have to take each change that I have put through here piecemeal too.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but I disagree because Jen's change is not talking about the conduct of the meeting. It's more of a administrative, it's trying to make it, it's something that the select board would automatically do anyway, is set a date.
But some of the things that I put in here also have to, like the time.
Okay, well,
Changing it.
we have a motion
that I have
and a
here.
second on the floor for Jen's article, so I don't really want to pursue further discussion on, is there any further discussion? Seeing none. Motion is second. All in favor to change the words weekday to on a day?
Aye.
All in favor?
Oh, oops, aye.
No one's in favor?
I was.
Okay. Okay. I think it's a good idea, too. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Motion fails. 2-3. Thank you. I'm going to ask everyone for a 2-minute recess, and we'll come right back.
Oh, I came late, I haven't been here long at all.
Oh, I know. I mean, I was
That's kind of a bummer.
just looking at the others.
Yes. Oh, am I speaking? I can speak. Okay. I was here just to, I sent in a request for community meeting. Sure, I'll speak.
Sorry, what's this, Sarah?
I don't know. I don't know which item he's here about.
Which item are you here about?
I sent in to my attorney, Edward Lee, a request to look at the host community agreement. He's probably,
That's what's on the.
That's not on the agenda.
What's on the agenda? I want the board to consider, whether they have, what they, you want application. They don't have a formal application process,
okay.
so that's what the board is.
Good job on that.
What? The marijuana? Thank you. I worked hard on that. And I wish I could take full credit, but I really just puzzle piece from other
Yeah.
towns as inspiration.
No, it's perfect. It's good for our town.
Thank you. Well, it's something.
Oh, that was a great, yeah.
I'm sorry.
All right, I'll just listen to you. I was all excited. I thought I was gonna
she's
speak
not.
extemporaneously, yeah.
Next time, well, you'll have your chance if they approve this application.
Okay.
Careful what you wish for.
Oh, yeah.
We lost our Area 58. Does he still have it running? I don't
I
know.
think we're still on.
Okay,
I believe
very,
so.
very good. Next item on the agenda is discussion on the interim, no, we did that. Excuse me, discussion and possible vote to approve marijuana establishment host community agreement process and criteria. Mr. LaFawn.
All right, well,
Mrs. Bogart.
I could,
Point of order.
Yes,
I kind of want to make sure that we're still rolling, that he didn't pause us or anything.
well, that was my concern. It looks like all the lights are on.
yeah, so he wasn't here when they took the recess.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
that's good to know. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Belvin. Mrs. Bogart.
okay, well, Rick and I worked together on something I'm actually really excited about and proud of. I think we have a really strong collaborative document here. Our starting point was the documents that I had emailed you guys, those 34 pages of stuff. Took that and I did a little more research and basically made sense of those documents and policies other towns have to see what I think would be great for Carver to have. And the culmination of that is before you. And I'd like to say this was like I had mind-boggling ideas, but really I took this bits and pieces from other towns. So none of this is new to the state. This is all being executed other places. But through conversation with Rick, we kind of figured out, okay, well, maybe we'd want this to happen now instead of here. So I think this is a really great document for us. It provides a very clear pathway for an applicant to proceed through town procedures while keeping everyone involved and informed, from us down to the community, specifying when the community outreach meeting has to happen, which is mandated. So I think it's pretty cut and dry, and I'm totally open to questions if you guys have any, but I hope that you understand kind of what it is, why we made it what we did, and support it.
If I could just
Mr.
add to
LaFawn,
that, I
please.
think, as Jen said, she did some homework, and I was able to survey some of my peers, and there's not an awful lot out there on this, and I think it's kind of been, a lot of towns are just kind of taking it as it comes. But there were some pretty good examples. I think if you had a chance to look through it, it's not onerous at all. It's just a matter of giving the board reasonable information up front. And I think that some of the conversation a little bit about the community outreach meeting, I think that is, to me, that's kind of what the core of this is, in my opinion, in terms of what is expected and a report back to the board on that. So those are things that I think procedurally, I think are probably helpful for the board to understand. The other point too is that makes it clear that the host community agreement is contingent upon other approvals, so that you don't have an applicant walking around saying, look, you got to give me one permit because I have the host community agreement. So clarifying those things, I think, is helpful. And like I said, it's not an onerous application process. There are some that use, some of them are really,
You had to draw a diagram. on
really,
one of them.
really in-depth, right? You need an organizational chart to get through it. So I personally think it's simple, but it gives the board more information, enough information. And I also don't think it's going to take up a lot of your time at your meetings unless you choose to. And here it's requested that people need to be prepared to make a 20-minute presentation to the board, meet and greet. We're not talking about something that's, going to take 2 hours of your night, too. So that's all I got, and I'm glad that we had a chance to, boil this down to something I think is helpful for this board.
Great. Thank you. Any discussion? Mr. Belbin?
Yeah, on page 7, you were just bringing up that 20-minute presentation. It just says a 20 presentation.
Oh,
You may need 20-minute
that's a good point.
presentation.
Well, I appreciate you pointing that out. 20 presentations, so.
Yeah,
I'm like, what is that? That was going to be my question.
Page
but-
7, Bob? All right, well,
Very last paragraph.
I think that was
Yep.
Jen's mistake.
Yeah, I've got 2 more highlighted right here, okay? Again, the taking criticism thing, I got them right here.
No, I want to say that this is really good, simple, easy to read, like I said, not onerous on the applicant coming before us, but gives us a really good sense of what the company is, what they do, how they do their business, and what they're going to offer our town. So I like that. I think you did an awesome job, both of you.
And I will say,
Thank you very much.
just last week, we did get an application for a cultivation license, not a retail, but a cultivation, and so we wanted to get on this quickly so that people come in the door, they've got something, we have something to give them, so not that it's a fire drill, but tonight would be a good time to approve it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Belbin?
the changes that you have highlighted on your thing, can you just let us know what those are? Because I'd like to make a motion, we approve this tonight.
Yeah, well, my first question was when page 1, number 3, Area 58 access, is that the proper name for Channel 15, Area 58 cable? What's their
Cable
full
access.
proper name?
Cable access.
Cable access media.
Okay, so Area 58, it should be Cable Access Media?
It should
Well,
say
it says
both.
community access.
Community access media, excuse me. Area 58,
Okay.
community access media.
Community access.
Just like it
Okay,
says at the
media.
top of our agenda.
Okay. Then I had like 2 extra spaces, like it's about, but last sentence, or last line, okay, page 1, number 3, last line. It says, community outreach meeting to broadcast and recorded by Area 58. Should be to be broadcast and recorded by Area 58. And then page 2, number 6, second to last line, host community agreements approved the select board will be approved by the select board. And then also, I think in number 4,
I'm
we're
sorry,
missing
where-
like a little,
Where's that, Jen? I'm sorry.
here, I'll bring it over to you.
Number 6.
Yeah, that was number, and then in number 4, we're just missing like the little dash before the word explanation, so there's like 5 dashes.
So number 6, it's the second line from the bottom.
Yeah.
Insert the word by, by, after approved.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry.
Yeah, oh, I see, and the dash.
Okay. All right, fair enough.
Thank you, Mrs. Bogart.
And then Bob got.
Right.
So
Okay.
I'll make a motion, we approve with those changes that have been discussed.
Thank you, Mr.
Second.
Belbin.
Second.
A second? Okay. There's been a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I just want to say great job, Jen. I know you put a lot of time and effort into it, and with all that research, and Rick as well.
Yeah.
But this is great. It's simplified. It's on a lot of key points, so great job.
Thank you. I know I talk colloquially, but it was really kind of cool to do. You know, it felt important. And being new on, it was really neat to do. So thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Mr. Townsend.
I just want to agree with Bob and Mr. Hoffman. Yeah, excellent job, and I agree. Well done.
Thank you.
And I concur. I think you did it really quickly and well. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay, a motion and second. All in favor of adopting this Town of Carver marijuana establishment host community agreement process and criteria? Please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's great. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much. So the next item on our agenda is to set the date for annual town meeting. Proposed dates, Monday 4/12, Tuesday 4/13. Are we leaving Saturday 4/17 in there, Mr. LaFawn?
I'm suggesting that not be part of this conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think you.
We will take that out. So proposed dates are Monday, April 12th, and Tuesday, April 13th.
I'll make a motion that we have it at Tuesday, 4/13 as the first choice, and the second choice is Monday, 4/12. That way, if something's going on the Tuesday, we switch it over to that Monday.
I'll second that.
Makes sense. There's been a motion and a second to make Tuesday, 4/13 our first choice for the annual town meeting date, and Monday, April 12th, our second choice. Any further discussion?
I would have picked the 17th as my second choice.
Mrs. Bogart?
Have we talked to Kara about this? What's good for her? Because I know that she has learned a ton from fellow town clerks recently about what has worked and hasn't worked in COVID and what she'll have going on too. I would love to know what she would want. I mean, we show up for town meeting, but she's, you know, she is a big part of making it successful. So, and this being my first time being part of setting town meeting date, I would like to know her input before we set one.
Well, I haven't spoken to Kara about it. I know town meeting is the same time every year, so I don't think this is anything that she's not already has in the back of her head as something she's preparing for. I will say, though, that I like the Tuesday better because you're probably aware that Monday is the predominant evening for town meetings. So if it's a Tuesday, there's usually no conflict with getting, town council there on that particular
Okay.
evening. So, so I do like the Tuesday better. But I haven't asked Kara about that question. But it is, again, this is the same time as it is every year here. So I don't know that would be
Yeah.
a concern.
It is usually the first couple of weeks in April, sometime in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other concern is that we absolutely have to have it in April because we have to, for the purposes of our consent order, for the Plymouth Street project, we are required to go to town meeting and seek an appropriation on or before April 30th. So,
On or before April
on or before April 30th.
30th, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Maybe she likes Wednesdays, I don't know.
So,
I would just like to know what she would prefer and what she thinks would be the most successful based on her experience and the experience of her peers, of which I know she communicates to a lot.
Yeah, I know, that's true. Mr. Belvin?
so on 2 points is, the Board of Selectmen picks the dates. That's just our purview there. But if she has an issue with this date, or even the moderator has an issue with this date, they can always come before us and say, hey, listen, can we pick a different date? All right, so, I mean, just because we put a date right now, doesn't mean at our next meeting, they come before us and say, hey, can you change this date? Well, then, yeah, well, we can make a modification at our next meeting. So they have 2 weeks before they can make a determination. Correct, Rick?
yeah, if you set tonight, before I even go home tonight, I'll email both the moderator and town clerk and inform them of the board's decision. If they haven't, a concern, then they can let us know. So,
And to your point, that is true. That has happened.
Okay.
So the way it usually works is we set the date, and I believe last year there was an issue with the date, and we just switched it. And she doesn't have to come before us. She can just tell us, as long as we know.
Right.
Okay, so it is fluid.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. It just has to happen before April 30th, as
Sure,
Mr. Lafon
obviously,
pointed out.
yeah. Okay.
So, okay. Mr. Hoffman?
And I also noticed that the town election's April 24th, so this will be before that.
Yeah,
As far as Kara's time.
I think she would, I can't speak for her, but if I were her, I'd like to get it out of the way.
No, I'm not even thinking swinging it weeks. I'm literally just thinking day, like within that week. Is there a preferable, again, I think she's learned a lot from peers.
Oh, definitely.
But,
But I'm sure she will let us know, as Mr. LaFawn
She
said,
may
he'll.
say Tuesdays are awesome. She may say these other days seem to be good. So I would just like to consult her. We set one and we can change it, awesome.
Yep, that's the way it works.
But she is, a lady with a lot of responsibility in it, so.
if I could tell you that
Mr. LaFawn?
our esteemed town clerk has texted me saying that Tuesday is fine with her.
Oh, isn't that awesome?
I shall text
She
her
is
back.
on the ball, huh?
Lovely.
But,
Very
yeah,
good.
Hi, Kara.
I see. So I don't have to text her back, is that?
That's right,
Okay,
that's great.
all right, so-
Okay, so there's a motion and a second to set the town meeting dates for our first choice being Tuesday, April 13th, second choice Monday, April 12th. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you all. And now I will entertain a motion to set the deadline for articles to be submitted for the annual town meeting of Friday, February 5th. I was in the office when Elaine was explaining when Mrs. Weston, was explaining to Mr. LaFond and myself just how this works, because you have to work backwards. So the ad in the paper, and if there's a public hearing, so this really is the latest date we could have articles submitted, would be Friday, February 5th.
I'll make a motion that we set February 5th, Friday, February 5th is the date, last date for articles to be submitted
Thank you.
for town meeting.
Thank you. Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion?
Just
Mr.
want to make it
Belvin?
clear that this deadline is for both petition articles
Correct.
and also for town boards and committees to get their articles in also by this date, that nothing else will be submitted after the 5th? Correct?
Yes, I was going to clarify that, but I appreciate your doing that. Yes, all articles, town boards, commissions, and committees, as well as petition articles. This will be the deadline, February 5th.
And can we get, the Board of Selectmen get a copy of all pending articles that go before the town meeting at that, by the
Oh,
following Monday or Tuesday of February? If they're all in by the 5th, that we get copies of everything, so we can start looking at them?
yeah, I would think that would be, I would say, sure, maybe a day or two, because obviously it's got to be, there's some word processing that has to go into putting this together, so
Right.
I wouldn't want to, commit to that 24-hour.
No, that's fine. I mean, within the week or whatever.
In principle, Bob,
Yep.
I will say
Right.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any further discussion on setting the deadline for articles to be submitted for the annual town meeting as Friday, February 5th? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item is approval of the Lakeville Animal Shelter Agreement. Mr. LaFawn.
Yes, this is an agreement we've had in place for a couple decades now, and this simply, I'm sorry, I've lost my train of thought here. The same terms and conditions that have been in place since I was a little boy. So it just has to be re-upped every once in a while, that's all.
Yep.
Basically for Lakeville's, liability more than anything else, so.
Right.
So I would ask that you approve the agreements.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion and a second to approve the Lakeville Animal Shelter
Motion to
Agreement?
approve.
Thank you, Mr. Belvin.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Discussion?
Just had a quick question.
Yes,
Oh,
Mr.
sorry,
Hoffman.
Bob.
No, you go first.
Rick, number 12 there, so this is only for 1 year?
It's,
Does this have
it's,
to get,
it's,
this have to get renewed every year?
it's annual.
Yes,
Annual? Okay.
yes, but it's the same agreement, as I said.
That's what I didn't understand when you said it's been around forever. I didn't know if it all of a sudden
Yeah,
expired.
yeah, no.
So it's an annual thing?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Belvin.
Have we looked at other towns to see if we can look at other towns to see if they're interested in taking on the role instead of Lakeville? Because Lakeville's not like a hop and skip and a jump. It's taking our animal control officer out of town for
Yeah,
a length
I-
of time and then come back and,
I haven't, Bob, over the years, I haven't done that. It's always seemed to work out reasonably well. But it's just, that's not, to my knowledge, nothing that's been looked at since, my hiatus either. So
Yeah.
you can certainly call around, but, of course,
one
we
of,
don't have a lot of clientele, which is helpful. And like anything, you have a good relationship for a period of time.
because it does cost us money as a taxpayer for this. It's $20 drop-off fee that the town of Carver pays for each dog that gets dropped off over there. And I did, as a sideline, I did take a tour with the chief and Mr. Harriman of the police station there, and that was one of the things that I had discussed with them about the animal control officer and possibly putting in a fenced-in area for an animal to be placed outside for a short period of time or whatnot. I know you can keep them in a crate is great, short term, but if we keep them for a little bit longer or whatnot, that if we can keep the animal in the town for a certain period of time, instead of driving them out of town, that may save us some money in the long run. Like I
Well,
said, I'm not an expert at the dog as an animal control officer or whatnot, but I mean, just my thought process.
And my thought on that is I appreciate your thinking about it, Mr. Belvin, but I think this agreement with Lakeville has been in place for many, many years. It works well. As Mr. LaFawn said, there aren't a lot of clients. There's not a lot of clientele, so. And I seem to recall years ago when we first started it, it was looked into, and it was a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
That was my understanding. So
Yeah, it's
there is a
been
motion and a second on the table. Any further discussion?
Yeah.
Mrs. Bogart.
The two different fees, so it's $20 to, if the animal control officer brings a dog there, then the officer pays them $20 to drop a dog off. And then
Well,
the,
they bill us. I mean,
They bill us for
they
that.
bill us for that. Yeah.
okay, so then what about the $50 fee in number 3? When the dog is surrendered and then placed for adoption, it will be accompanied by a fee of $50. So do we get billed for that too? Or like, is that if a dog doesn't get, like if someone says, here, take my dog, because I can't have it, then the animal control officer brings it to Lakeville and says, no one's going to come claim this dog? You're kind of our adoption agency, so here's $50 to find the dog a new home? Is that kind of what it is in layman's terms?
That could be. I mean, that could be a scenario. I'm not sure I'm familiar with every scenario that could come up, but, you know, I guess say more of a surrender, yeah. Yeah, that's,
It says when the dog is adopted.
yeah, and I think the owner who's surrendering would be paying this $50.
Well, that
That's
was-
where the money's coming from, yes.
Right, so the
Yes.
person surrendering pays the $50, which
Right.
then gets passed on to the animal shelter. Because it says when the
Correct.
dog's adopted,
No,
they
that's-
keep it.
All right, I misunderstood. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so that's coming from them. Okay, so then me and my typos, in number 7, instead of saying after it is released to their owner, it should say after it is released to its owner. And it says that correctly throughout the document, so that's just
I
clarifying.
will say that this is Lakeville's error.
I didn't blame anyone,
Just
I'm just
saying.
that person. It keeps it consistent throughout the document.
Yeah, I'm,
Okay.
When-
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Just to clarify, is that $50 fee, if somebody, we pick up a dog and nobody claims it, is Carver gonna get on the hook for that $50 fee? I think that needs to be,
yeah, no, we just, we don't get charged for that, no, that's.
Okay,
no,
just
that's-
checking.
No,
thank you.
Town Administrator update. Mr. LaFawn.
yes, few things. Last week, we had a meeting, a number of us had a meeting with me, Meg, the Finance Director, O&M Director, and DPW Director.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can you just speak a little closer to the mic? Or pull
Yes,
it?
yes.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Last week, we had a meeting with the president of Brenda Bacal of Cranberry Village, and Mr. Rose attended with her, and another member of the board over there, and their water property manager. We've had an issue down there for, I guess, quite some time, but over the past summer, the village basically stopped paying their bills. And I'm not saying that as a criticism. They had some concerns, questions about the billing information they were getting. The town, through Dave, had worked to get some additional information from the water operator so to respond to some of their requests, concerns. There was some back and forth, and you know how sometimes things are lost in translation. So we had a meeting, and ultimately, what the result was, number one, there was a lot of information that was conveyed. I think that was helpful in terms of, you know, the village understanding what this account was, how it worked, some of its history. And I don't think you can, unless you start to get that bigger picture, it's hard to understand where we are today and why. So at some point, they understood that, okay, this isn't, the town's not making any money off this. In fact, this is actually a burden to the town, an operational burden to the town. We can all discuss what happened in the 1980s that got us to this point. So after having held out bills from August, they actually, we decided, they agreed that they would pay their bills from September forward to get us caught up. And then, acting in good faith, they actually paid August too. So I thought that was very nice of them. So I think we have a better relationship now with the water operators. It would be nice to get them better billing information, but it's not something that's ever been available, it's never been asked for. So that can be dealt with, bills can be better formatted to meet their goals. Why this, you know, I don't know that this has been an issue that's gone on for very long, but some of you may know that there's been some issues with leaks, either inside the park or outside, and the way the meters are set up, it's you know, you have 1 meter it's read one day, another meter that might be read next month. It hasn't worked together that well because the town owns this and the village owns this. So trying to make that all fit together well, I think we are achieving that, but the longer-term question here is whether or not this is something the town should continue to own and operate. And I think when that was suggested by Ms. Bacal, most of us fell off our chairs because we've been talking about for how long, wouldn't it be great if the town didn't have to own and operate this well? Again, it doesn't do anything for the town at all. So we did commit that we would get their billing information as up-to-date as possible, that we would be able to, that they would also, if there was any conversation, that we can put them in touch with our water operator, and that we would also start to look at and see what opportunities we may have for turning that well over to them in some fashion. So I don't know if there's any opposition from the board with regard to looking at that. But as I said, it just doesn't do the town any good. We just have an operational burden and a liability burden from that.
The well, is that on town property or is it still on their property?
The well is actually on town property. The property that the well was on was deeded to the town in 1980 from Mr.
Right.
Piper. So it is the town's property. Right.
So if something should have to be done to transfer, we'd have to deed it back to them, or,
Presumably, yes, or some other legal arrangement where they would have custody, that's for the legal minds, but I think in concept, we were talking about perhaps
A lease agreement.
deeding the property back to them in some fashion. But those options can be explored. I think, it's a matter of, number one, in principle, is it a good idea to have the village essentially control and operate those wells and have custody of that land, so that the town is no longer in that business? So I think we, at least internally, collectively, we are all very pleased that that's something the village may actually want to do, to the extent they even suggested it. We were almost afraid to suggest it. So
I just have one question,
Sure.
Mr. LaFont. I'm assuming that the people you spoke with is our new village president, who perhaps hadn't been part of the process originally?
yeah, it's my understanding she's been president for a few years now.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'm wrong.
But once again, this is an old process, old system.
Yep, it is.
So,
Yeah. No, that's
I don't
okay.
think too long, maybe 2 or 3 years. I don't think she's been there forever. We had a very nice conversation. It was nice to meet her, and,
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Belvin?
Now, did you say the finance chair was part of this discussion?
no, the finance director.
Okay, I just.
Meg, yes,
All
no,
right.
yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be interested in any information to come back to us to
Yeah.
burden us not into having to do this ever again with them, and if they want to take it over, I personally would have no problem with that, and let them take
Well,
over.
we're not pointing fingers over, even in good faith, who's responsible for what, and,
Right.
where's this line? Where does it begin? Where's it the towns? Where's it the Cranberry Villages? It's just, it's a little bit sloppy, And when everything's running perfectly, it doesn't matter, but
Yeah.
like everything else, so. So anyway, we're very happy to deal with that, and we'll be doing so as we go forward. Most of you, if not all, are aware that it's a few years back, the town did appropriate funds for permitting software for the town. And we have a vendor on board, and the training has begun, staff training, which I understand it's a very, very user-friendly. Right now, we are talking about just basically building permits and the various functions that go into that from other departments. It does have other capabilities, and if we're willing to pay a lot more, it has a lot of capabilities. But right now, we're just focusing on building permits, building, electric, plumbing. And it will, basically, almost from step one to actually the signing of a building permit, a resident or a contractor will basically be able to file for and track their own permit. hopefully takes the office out of chasing down, applicants for information, things that people are supposed to know, but it just becomes easy to start to rely upon, the human element, what do I need, it just takes a lot of burden off the department. And the goal here isn't to, hopefully it allows us to better just reappropriate the meager resources we have, so, not to mention being much, much user-friendly. And I think there's about, probably half the state, communities in the state are using some sort of software permitting, so. The other piece of this too is, some communities, and doing the same thing too, is, the full cost wasn't in our appropriation from a couple of years ago, but to the extent that this is one way that we can keep people from having to come into town hall, can maintain as much social distancing as possible. I know some communities, and I'm going to do the same thing, is see if there's CARES Act reimbursement opportunity with this.
Mr. Hoffman?
Quick question on it. So the $40,000, this new system is more than that? Is that
Well, this is the amount that's appropriated was $40,000. The initial software investment in training and first-year service contract is incorporated within this number. So it's,
So it's all covered by this 40,000?
basically, yes. Like I said, the balance we're seeking some assistance through the CARES Act, that's all.
So, and just my own, what was the procedure like? Did you look at different programs, that type of thing? And-
Yes, we actually, I know this was done a few years back too, and Elaine recalls that, I'm sure. But when we started to look at this again seriously, there's a couple vendors on the state bid list. Despite that, we still put out a request for proposals or qualifications, and ultimately, we did get 3 respondents. Internally, there was a meeting with, Jim Walsh organized meeting with the various permitting authorities in town to interview all 3, see their demonstrations. So ultimately, I think the number one factor which led to this particular firm is that they have a very, number one, very easy to use, and their software integrates very well with the assessing software that this town uses. So it seemed like a pretty good match, and like the other firms, this firm has a lot of business in Massachusetts. They have the entire state of Rhode Island, so this is what they do. So it's, we think, and like I said, it's user-friendly, the staff, I'm even told I could probably use it if I had to. So that's a good selling point, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. So, and the other thing is we hope that by April, mid-April, that we should be functional.
Good, excellent.
And Plymouth Street Water, just a quick update there. The timetable is listed, as everyone knows, we're under consent order, and we're keeping this process moving, and I thank Kevin for his efforts in doing so. But as you can see, the current deadline we're working out is January 30th with getting our invitations for bid out on the streets. And that's actually just happened, so we're a little bit ahead of schedule. The time frame, back to our town meeting discussion, is we need to be seeking an appropriation by the 30th of April and being prepared to award a contract by the end of April. It doesn't speak to what happens if the town meeting doesn't appropriate the funds, but I can't imagine that that's going to be an obstacle if we could come to this point. I don't think any of us want to be in that situation. So I have little doubt that all of us, Finance Committee, others are going to recommend this very strongly to town meeting. So we'll, I think it was Mr. Townsend's request, even if there's little or nothing to say, we'll keep this on the agenda going forward.
Thank you.
And the last piece of, not much news, but we do have an interim building inspector Mr. Francis, as you all know, retired again. Nice position to be in, I suppose, when you can retire again. And he has started, he's got qualifications from 2 towns, actually 3 towns. He's a retiree, so he can give us the same hours that Bob was giving us. We hope that certainly going into the next fiscal year, we'll be in a position to be advertising for a full-time building commissioner. It'd be nice to think that we might be able to do that sooner, but I'm not comfortable with that yet in terms of our finances. If it gets to that point where I think we can do that, well, then we can have the conversation at that time. But for now, at least we're keeping up and actually doing a little bit of zoning enforcement from that position too, which, to Jim's credit, Jim Walsh has been basically bearing the brunt of zoning enforcement, which really isn't his job. He's got a lot of other things he could be doing.
Right.
And so he doesn't need to fall behind on those things that are his job, so. I have 2 other
And I
quick,
just wanted to add on that.
Yes.
Mr. LaFawn, typically, are you hiring me as an inspector or as the commissioner?
inspector. He's an
Okay.
inspector.
So typically, a building commissioner, which is presumably what we would get if it were full-time,
Yes.
also serves as our zoning enforcement officer. And
Right.
doing both together really is a full-time
Mhm.
job. So what Mr. LaFawn was referring to is right now, we really don't have someone doing zoning enforcement who, we
Yeah.
have someone kind of doing it, doing the
No,
best.
that's
he can.
right.
But
It's-
it's not really
no,
Mr. Walsh's
it's-
job to do that. He's the
No,
planner.
and when you kind of have a town that, master plan when you don't even need a master plan for people to know that, keeping the character of the town the way you want it to be doesn't happen without zoning enforcement.
That's right.
I mean, zoning bylaws are great.
But
Doesn't matter if they're not being
they have no
enforced. so.
teeth, exactly.
Right.
Thank you.
A couple of the quick items. Bill Duggan informed me this week that he is resigning from the Finance Committee. And so we have an opening there to be posted. And Donna Ferrand informed me this morning that she's resigning from her position on the COA. So I know they've both served this town for many years, so I want to thank them for their service. I know I've developed a pretty good relationship with both of them. So, and when you see them on the streets, last thing, as of, what's today, Monday? Tuesday? The end of last week, I think, between the finance director and our school administration, we have a budget that is balanced that we think we can comfortably recommend to everybody. So whatever the timing is, I don't know what the history has been, to listen to me drone on for an hour or so about, revenues, forecasts, proposed budget. I'll have to leave that to you to determine when that is, but next week I'm meeting with our department heads to address that, get their input. We have a couple goals that we've tried to achieve. One is to get even though it's not a lot of money, but the recreation coordinator position has been basically funded by, on an annual town meeting basis from free cash. And so trying to get that as an operating cost in the budget where it belongs, something that we are proposing. Building in a little bit of money also to help the police department start to add some sergeant positions for promotional opportunities as we look forward to like 5 years out when there's going to be a lot of management staff turnover. Those are the, I guess you'd say, initiatives. They're not large by initiatives, but just to try to address some of those small issues that have been raised. One of the things we're also trying to do, as currently constituted, is to replace the $200,000 that we used from stabilization last year, back in the stabilization fund. So, again, it's not the most ambitious budget, but on the other hand, it's level services and addressing a couple little items that we think are important. So once again, we have a very, very good school administration to work with during these difficult times, so.
That's good. And on that subject of the budget, I know we had discussed having a Saturday meeting with the department heads and possibly being on January 30th, just prior to the finance committee's meeting with them on the 1st of February. Is that?
I'm at your disposal. whatever it is that you can, put up
No,
with.
we should have had that on the agenda, but since you did talk about that, maybe that's something that you could ask
Sure.
members in an email. And,
And I'll obviously double check with Mr. Germain again to make sure. I
Right.
suspect he's had to have some conversations with his committee too.
sure, of course.
All right.
Thank you.
And that's more tedious than normal, but that's all I have tonight.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have a request for a common victualler license, Ambition Nutrition LLC. Would you like to come forward? Thank you for being here. If you could just tell us your name and give us some idea of what this is all about.
Sure. Hi, everyone.
You have to speak right into the microphone.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Ward, owner of Ambition Nutrition. So what we do over there is kind of a remix on nutrition. So we have meal replacement shakes, energizing teas, all that fun stuff. And we're all about balance. So they all are named after different desserts or your favorite candies and things like that. And we put a little bit of those toppings in it, but the base of all the shakes is high protein, high dense nutrition. So, yeah.
That's great. And where are you located?
96 North Main Street, so we're in the same plaza as Cornerstone's Pub and Grill.
Great, thank you. Do we have a motion and a second for discussion?
I make a motion we approve.
Second?
Any discussion? Mrs. Bogart?
I haven't been there yet, but I've seen the pictures and the captions, and every time I see one, I'm like, when am I gonna go? So for anyone who hasn't been on Facebook and seen this stuff, like, her stuff is crazy good looking.
Thank you.
So I will be in at some point. So
Thank you.
yeah, it looks awesome. I was so psyched to see this was in Carver. I was like, when did this get here? So I wish you immense success.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Do you have other locations?
Yes, so, well, within the family, my sister has a location in Plymouth, and then we have a team member who just opened, it's actually called Remix Nutrition in Marshfield. So,
Thank you. Mr. Hoffman?
What are your hours?
closed on Mondays, Tuesday through Friday, 7 to 4, and then the weekends, 9 to 2.
This is a good time to advertise. You're on TV.
Oh, yes, I forgot about that.
So we want to let everybody know your hours. and
That's right.
Yep,
that'll-
yep.
That's great.
Great, okay. Anyone else? There's been a motion and a second to approve the common victualler license for Ambition Nutrition LLC. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Welcome to
you.
Carver.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, good
Thank
luck.
you, thank you.
Okay, our next Select Board meeting will be February 2nd, 2021. Minutes of 12/4/2020, 12/15/20, and 1/5/21.
Can I make a motion we bundle these three, if it's okay with the other members?
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second that.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Mr. Townsend?
On the December 4th meeting, on page 2, the chapter 61A, notice of intent, toward the bottom, I believe the motion by Townsend was to decline to exercise the town's right of first refusal,
Right.
not to exercise the right of first refusal.
Okay, and actually, I believe that I was going to get changes to Elaine, and I did not do that.
Do we want to push December 4th possibly off to the next meeting?
Yes, I'm just, yeah, I think that, which one are you looking at, Mr. Townsend?
Page 2,
Of which date?
I'm sorry, December 4th. The chapter 61A, notice of intent.
Yeah, yes, I actually did not do my homework. I have corrections for December 4th and 15th, so I would appreciate if we could table those, and I will get those to Mrs. Weston,
Make a motion we table December 4th
and 15th.
and 15th.
Second.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so motion to table December 4th and December 15th, 2020. All in favor?
Aye.
Passed unanimously. Is there a motion to approve January 5th?
I'll make a motion, we approve January 5th.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded to approve January 5th, 2021. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, Select Board Community Announcements. Mr. Belbin? You have-
I just want to say thank you very much to the police chief for the tour of the police station and taking my comments. And like I said, it will be a nice building for the town. All right, and that's really it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Bogart, anything?
Yeah, I have two today. I'm excited that what started a long time ago as one of my select board member notes about having activities for kids every month went through us and then hit Elaine, and a whole bunch of work happened. And I saw that it just started. I saw it on the library website, so I'd like to read what's going on in January. It says, the town of Carver has decided to run a special program for Carver children ages 3 to 9. There will be a town-related activity each month with prizes available at the library. Simply take a picture of your activity or let the library staff know you have completed it and choose a prize next time you visit. So the January challenge is choose your favorite Carver noun, a person, a place, or a thing, and draw a picture with your first name only on the front. Example, you could draw your teacher, an event that happens in Carver, or a building. So that's like right what I had in my mind when it started, and I'm so excited that it's happening. So thank you guys for supporting it. Thank you, Elaine, for helping facilitate it. And let's do it, kids. And then my other one is that open burning season has begun. So to get your burning permit, please contact the Carver Fire Department.
Thank you, Mrs. Bogart. Mr. Hoffman, you have anything?
I'm all set for this meeting.
Mr. Townsend?
I have nothing this evening, thank you.
Very well, thank you. Select Board notes. Mr. Belbin?
Okay, I don't know if you other selectmen received this disturbing email, or I should say, on our message portal for our town, but I wrote something about it. Everyone has their own thoughts or opinions on every subject you could think of. So I'm going to read this so I don't mess up. Hello, Carver residents. I am one of a few members of our town that received a message via our town portal. I appreciate and read and respond to all, except for this one. It was a message of hate, a message I do not stand for and will never support that way of thinking. It was concerning religion, sexual orientation, and our laws. I will not repeat the hateful sentiments that were stated in this communication because the writer doesn't deserve that attention. What I will say is, I will not stand for anyone who makes the statements and comments this person made about another person or group. The First Amendment, freedom of speech, religion, press, and assembly is precious to me. Protecting that right is of the utmost importance to me. Although I may not like what is being said, it's allowed and must be protected. This message of hate disgusted me. Religion is sacred to me. My religious beliefs are mine, and I will defend my beliefs in religion the same as defending others' religion. It must be protected. I would never support any law that would discriminate against someone based on their gender, age, race, religion, sexual orientation, natural origin, or any other protected category. Bottom line is this. I like to have the means for residents to reach out to me. The town web portal is a valuable asset to our town. If you want to make a comment and get a reply, please do. But if you are going to write hateful, disgusting crap, I will not respond to it ever. Our Pledge of Allegiance states, with liberty and justice for all. That's what it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Belvin. I did not get any other Select Board notes from the other members, so I have just two quick items. The goals and objectives of the Select Board, typically, for the past few years, we've been having meetings to set our goals and objectives to help both ourselves as well as our town administrator, some guideline, roadmap. So I just wanted us at our next meeting to decide how we want to proceed with this, whether we even want to use a facilitator. Do we want to do it in a more informal way? If we do want to use a facilitator, who that facilitator would be. I personally know that the Collins Center out of UMass Boston, this is one of the many government services they perform, and I think do well. So if we do use a facilitator, I'm not saying we should, that would be my preference, but it's just something to think about for next time. The other issue is the appointments to permitting authority boards and commissions for possible vote and submission at next year's meeting. So at next year's meeting, our next board meeting, as a town meeting warrant article. I would just like you to take one last look at those, at the emails I got from various people on these permitting authorities. Some of the changes that they suggested I thought were very, really valid. Some of them maybe conflict with each other, so I'd really like you to give some thought on those, and let's see if we can get this up as a warrant article as soon as we can. I would appreciate that, so thank you. And that's it for tonight. Now we're going to go into executive session in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21(6), to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate if the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the town, and to return to open session for adjournment.
No, oh, okay.
Mr. LaFawn?
No, I was gonna, thought it was to, not to return, but now I'm.
Well, it says to return to
Okay.
open session for adjournment, unfortunately, but, so this will take a roll call vote. Mr. Belbin, how do you vote? Mr. Belbin?
I don't know what, is there a location?
What do you mean a location? Oh, yes, but that's part of the executive session discussion?
I would like a location of if, because
The person who owns the property in question is aware that we're going to have this discussion, just so you know.
but the public doesn't.
Right, is that necessary, Mr. LaFawn? And I honestly don't know the answer to that question.
Well, it's a tough one, because the question is, at this point in time, does knowledge, public knowledge of what properties we're talking about, does that maybe, does that in any way hurt our negotiating position potentially? I think you could make an argument that it does. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, you can make this decision. I think for tonight, I would suggest that we move forward with the motion as presented, and I think going beyond this, if we have further discussions, then it may be more appropriate to name those properties, but I think you'll have a better feel for it after we discuss it a little bit, Bob.
Okay.
Thank you.
Robert Belvin says aye.
Mrs. Bogart?
Jim Bogart says aye.
Mr. Hoffman?
Jim Hoffman says aye.
Mr. Townsend?
Mark Townsend says aye.
And Sarah Hewen says aye. Thank you. We're adjourned from this part of our meeting, coming back only for final adjournment. Thank you.